you know what? That's the entrepreneurial world. And we got some Christmas music in the background. We got an amazing person lined up for you today. And we'll just chat and give people a few minutes to join the podcast. This is the Pulling Each Other Along show. And my name is Doug Cornfield. I have two Daves. I almost always have two Daves, if not three, with me. But today, Dave Geist is unavailable. Normally he is here from Milwaukee. And we have filling in for Dave Geist. He's leaving us this very second. Dave Stevens back on the show with us, our famous Dave.
How are you guys? It's great to be here.
We just saw Dave Stevens
No, we were
last
just
week.
together, right?
Seems like it just seems like the other day when it was Thursday night, and now it's Thursday night again. And we had the art show last week. If anybody's interested in some art, we still have a few pieces left. Mindy's working on some more for an art, or not Mindy. Stacy is working on some more for a show. So thank you, folks, for being here. Another cold day in Corning, New York. How about you, Dave Clark?
85
degrees. Dave Stevens, you're probably cold like me. I actually put one of our new hoodies on. You know, I got my wagon hoodie here. And
it's cold in Connecticut, and dealing with bursitis in the shoulder doesn't really help when the weather's this cold. So, yeah, everybody's saying, get to Arizona. Boy, I wish I could.
Couple more years, and of course it's get to Florida for me, because we want to get down to Florida. So we do have an amazing guest to bring on, and she's a part of the Pulling Each Other Along book. Dave, I know you had a chance to meet this lovely lady. Let me just introduce that. Just
yeah, I shake my little tush on the catwalk.
there you go, Dave Stevens. I don't know. You got to ham it up on the runway.
That's probably how I wrenched my shoulder, was doing all my fancy modeling moves in New York.
Yeah. So we got. What did Todd say? Hey, I had to pay for a sweatshirt. You probably haven't even gotten one yet, Todd. We'll need to work on that. But anyway, we want to bring in our special guest today. She has pulled along so many in a very special way. We want to make her the pivotal point of this show. Hi, Mindy. How are you doing?
Hi, how are you? I'm so happy to be here.
And where are you residing? It's probably cold where you are as well, right?
Very cold. Very cold. I'm right outside of New York City. Super cold.
Yeah. So it's I don't know. It gets colder, unfortunately, up here in New York, but in upstate New York. I know people from downstate, they come up to New York, and I go, where you live? And they go, New York. And we go, well, we're still in New York. They can't think outside the city, pretty much. But thank you for what you do. Dave Clark, lead us off with a question for Mindy.
Well, a question? I've got more of a comment, because Mindy, I grew up, I had polio when I was 10 months old. And so my clothing, my wardrobe was always tough to, because I can remember my mom, I wore braces, still do. And I can remember mom patching all my clothes because the braces would wear through at the knees. And it was always she always had to mend the right leg a little bit higher than the left leg. So she had to custom make my clothes in a day when custom clothing really wasn't the end thing to do. So, and then today, dealing with post polio, it's sometimes tough to wear heavier clothing. So I think the comment I want to make is what you're doing is really needed. You know that, and the fact that just my own situation, there's millions of us out there that need that customized clothing, and if that's what you want to call it. So I guess if I had to form a question for it, how did you get into what you're doing now, and what is making you still want to do it?
Well, thank you. And again, thank you so much for having me on the show. I was really excited to be here. So I am fortunate that I am a fashion designer by trade. And I'm also the mom of a young man with muscular dystrophy who's actually about to turn 17 in a couple weeks, which I can't believe. But when he was young, he really struggled with the one thing that I love more than anything, and that's getting dressed every day. For him, it was a daily reminder of what he could not do, which are buttons and zippers and putting pants over his leg braces, putting on shoes, tying shoes, all things that I think we all take for granted. And certainly something, even in my career, that was never brought up or addressed or thought of is people with disabilities until it became very personal. So in 2013, I decided to take my background and have a small goal of changing the fashion industry to be inclusive of the largest minority on our planet, the 1.3 billion people that, by the way, those are the ones that identify as having a disability. So actually that number is much larger. And being able to include them in the fashion conversation, in design, in how product is developed, in creating ways that can make dressing easier. And we were fortunate enough in 2016 to partner with Tommy Hilfiger. And I developed modifications that are now being implemented into his product line, which is now Tommy Adaptive. And it has really changed the lives of millions of people, and of course, my son included.
Mindy, I don't know if you are aware of this, but Tommy Hilfiger grew up in my hometown.
I remember you telling me that. Yes.
Of Corning, New York. My parents ran a small garbage company in Corning, New York for several years, and they actually picked Tommy. I think he started out as the People's Place.
Yes.
In Corning, New York, after the flood of 72.
100% accurate. Yes.
And my parents picked up his garbage. So just a little connection there with Tommy.
Yeah, that's and obviously the Hilfiger store is still right here in Corning, right downtown. I mean, literally, probably as the crow flies, less than a mile from my house. And I guess this Tommy's sister runs that, so we do have that connection. And Tommy got interested in this because doesn't he have I think it's a child with autism?
He has two, actually.
Two? Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's it doesn't. It's amazing that the different connections and people do what we do. I have a son who was born with neither arm, and so meeting Dave was one of those things. I reached out to him when I found out of his story because it was so close here to Corning, and we all have that touch of why we do what we do, and especially in this world, in the disability world. It's just amazing. So tell us how. I know you have the son. And you got to meet Dave not too long ago. The other Dave that's here on the show. What's this? I pulled this picture up. There
I love that picture.
So there's and so what? There you go. Look at Dave showing off. So tell us what happened, because that wasn't too long ago, the show that you did in New York City. And tell us about what you do with these shows and how important they are to the disability community.
So really, as Runway Dreams started really getting some traction, it became very important to kind of play in the sandbox of the fashion industry. And the greatest event that we have is New York Fashion Week. And that became my goal, to be able to have people with disabilities shine on a runway and really show the industry that people with disabilities are consumers too, and people, and love to look exactly how they want to look. So I started my first runway show in 2016 and eventually have evolved to where we were this past year in September of this past Fashion Week that Dave was the star of. And the exciting part is really that in 2016 we started with one brand, Tommy Hilfiger, and this past year we had 6 brands on our runway. We had Tommy and Target and Kohl's and J.C. Penney, Zappos and Stride Rite. So the fact that we went from one mainstream brand to 6 mainstream brands in a relatively short amount of time is really evidence that the industry is understanding the power of this population, the importance of this population, and that truthfully, adaptive clothing is going to be the next category in the fashion industry, no different than plus size or petite. And it really helps in both aspects. It is so amazing and empowering for our models that are on the runway to be able to have this experience. I mean, I'm sure Dave could share what it was like behind the scenes and to be with all of the other 60 models that were in the show of all different abilities and ages and ethnicities. But it also really reframes to the world who people with disabilities are, and really is helping to rebrand how our mainstream world views people with disabilities.
Mindy, you've had some important meetings recently, but tomorrow you're making an important appearance in New York at the Fashion Futures Summit. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on tomorrow and the expectations? And you're working with some heavy hitters there as well.
It's very exciting. I am so honored. It's actually a global event that is in Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, I couldn't go there in person, but they're doing hubs around the world with leaders in the fashion industry about the importance of inclusion and sustainability. And I am so fortunate to be able to be speaking with some real big people in the fashion industry. And what I love about events like tomorrow is that this conversation has really made it to the main table. We have really grown to be considered as important as other topics in the fashion industry. And in some cases, we are the most important topic, as every person on this planet will experience some type of disability, whether it's just getting old in their lifetime. So, of course, we need to think about how clothing works for, or making it easier, and the ease of dressing, and rethinking the way that things are designed, because it ultimately is going to help every one of us. So I'm, again, just really honored to be there tomorrow.
And how do you change the mindset, though, of like these third world nations where they hide, they shun, they, God forbid, what they've done to those that have disabilities in these countries? How do you get these countries to open up, think outside the box, and embrace this type of a market?
I would say it's really showing the power and the size of this population. And as much as I would love to say that I, hope the world does the right thing and includes people with disabilities, but the bottom line is it's also a tremendous business opportunity. And that's really what the industry is realizing. And that people with disabilities need to be considered consumers just like everybody else. And the reality is that it's estimated that $3 trillion is being left on the table every year by not including people with disabilities in product development and products and services in our world. So, like I would say, other industries and the way things have been built in third world countries, this will just be another element that we need to work on and build and continue to talk about and show the value and importance of this.
So we had a one of our listeners or watchers, I guess they're listeners and watchers. Norma Jean, hi, how are you doing? She said hi to both Dave and I, and Gia, hi to Gia too. And she's got a daughter, just a special daughter. Actually, I'm connected through Dave, but she had this question on here a real specific question. Gia's got spina bifida. She's 30 years old. Hard to find comfortable, age-appropriate clothing, which is what you're all about.
Yes.
And she wants advice on just finding warm socks and shoes and boots. And it's such a specific question that probably you're the one to answer that one today.
Well, I'm going to do my best.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of platforms and companies out there that do a great job of really focusing on different needs in the world of disabilities. The first one is Zappos.com. They have a platform within Zappos called Zappos Adaptive that they have all different types of products, including footwear and socks and apparel. They curate the brands. Tommy Hilfiger Adaptive is on there, as well as many other brands. So I would say that would be a great place to start. There's also another company that's actually based in New Zealand called Every Human, but I believe that you can still get product from them as well. And they also do a great job of curating different adaptive, modern, stylish products.
Well, that's good information. If you have to rewind this show will be on and get that information from Mindy. But Zappos would probably be the big one. And just as a plug, Zappos is also a part of the Pulling Each Other Along book.
Yes.
That's coming up, a part of the show here. And I know, Mindy, you're a part of that, and we look forward to reading your story and so many others. So thank you for joining us in this upcoming book. And so that's great info. And so thanks, Norma Jean, and hopefully we get to see you again. I don't know. The whole COVID thing has kept us from doing things that we've done before. Got to know Norma Jean and Gia back in Minnesota for the Super Bowl, when they help out with the Wounded Warrior amputee football team that Dave's a part of, and that I've helped out with in a minor way as well. So anyway, that's great. So I've got a question. No, I wanted to say something because Dave mentioned his mom fixing his clothing. It would rub up against his jeans. And one of the things that Dave has said to me, and Dave Clark, that is, that you might need to clarify, but if I remember correctly, your mom used to put the patch on the inside, because back in our day, the patches on the outside basically meant you were a poor kid. And they would put the patches on, and it was embarrassing to have clothing with patches because that basically meant you were poor. And I think, if I remember correctly, your mom used to do the patches on the inside to make sure that the braces basically weren't rubbing through as much.
Well, let me clarify something. We were poor, but she still put them on the inside. And wearing patches on the outside then wasn't cool. So it really helped that she did that. She went over and above and beyond as far as clothing for me, because you don't really appreciate it till you get older what your parents might have done for you. And clothing was always an issue because I was and shoes. Shoes back when I was just probably up until you got pictures of me playing baseball in the pros where I'm still wearing a shoe attached to the brace. Nowadays, at least I can go buy, and that is a shoe that's still attached to the brace, and I've got a spike over top of the shoe. Nowadays, I just have a little foot plate on the brace, and I can slip any shoe I want over top of it. But back in the days of growing up, that was an issue. And I tell you a quick story. 4th of July. This is a danger point for that kind of a shoe because it's connected to your brace. So you have to take the entire brace off to get the shoe off. 4th of July, and I've never handled a sparkler again since this incident. But one 4th of July, a sparkler threw down sparks on top of my shoe. It burned through the shoe and caught my foot on fire, and I couldn't get the brace off.
Oh gosh.
So to this day, I shun away from fireworks. because you couldn't get the shoe off. So it was pretty scary at that time. But no, what you're doing is really, really needed. And Tommy as well. If I didn't know Tommy had an adaptive
Yes.
part of his business,
Hmm.
and he needs to talk to me and Doug. We need to get Tommy here and have him get me some kind of pants that I can wear comfortably.
You
That's
can
the other.
go
That's
to
the other. That's the other.
Tommy.com and get it.
That's the other issue, Mindy, is not just style but comfort.
Hmm.
Because with different disabilities or limitations, something that's comfortable to one person might not be to another, and so it's a huge issue. I wear sweatpants a lot. They're comfortable.
Dave, I went through a lot of the similar stuff that you did when I was wearing artificial legs as a kid, because, I would have to take the shoes off and the pants off, and it's not like they easily go on. And so it would be easier to just wear the same pair of pants 3 or 4 days in a row. We were poor anyway. So if I had something with snaps or zippers or the things that Mindy's been working with a lot of these designers with, I mean, it's changing the world. And when my students were at the Runway of Dreams, Will Dean, our reporter, he was like, I have a tough time and I'm normal, dealing with the snaps of the buttons. And he loved these ideas, and it helps open up those eyes to those people that aren't always aware of our world. But Mindy, I wanted to ask one thing, and I don't know if it's putting you on the spot, but a lot of times when you build such a small niche, we talk about costs, and it's like there are many people with disabilities who are very poor. So, I mean, are we getting to that point where it's an affordable type thing, or is it still such a niche that you've got like Untucket prices for things that we want everybody to be wearing?
Well, that really, it's a great question and an important one, and really was kind of the ethos behind developing modifications versus starting my own collection in line, because I wanted the modifications to be able to be implemented in all products, whether it's on the budget end or luxury. So, for example, like this is one of the first tops that we did with Tommy. It's his typical Tommy button front shirt, only behind the buttons are magnets. And that so that it can close on its own. But that modification could be placed in product in Target and product at Gucci. So, I'm so excited to say that Target and Kohl's are very involved in the space. Actually, Kohl's is one of our presenting sponsors at Runway of Dreams, and it is also something that is a big place where the money that we raise through Runway Dreams goes to, that we do wardrobe grants to be able to grant those that are not going to be able to afford new adaptive clothing, no matter how affordable we get it, as well as small facilities or organizations that can apply for grants to be able to purchase the new adaptive clothing.
Tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously one of the things that with us, with what Dave and I do with sports camps for kids with limitations and disabilities, in some cases, if we charge $10 or $15, it might preclude somebody from actually coming, because they're hit with so many bills. They're hit with, and again, I have a son born with neither arm, the doctor's bills, the Ronald McDonald houses. If we didn't have those things, it would have just been incredibly difficult. It was difficult already. But when you go to a Ronald McDonald house, and they charged us $1 a day, but they fed 3 or 4 people. I mean, it was just amazing, how they pulled us along at a time when you're there for 2 months.
Yes.
With all the doctor bills and everything else, when you're having these major operations. And I consider our situation minor compared to what many of these people face.
Mm.
And so it's one of the reasons Dave and I, we've never charged for Dave and I, we've never charged for a sports camp that we run. Either we raise the money or we don't do it. So that is a big issue with some people.
Absolutely.
But they're all buying clothing. but this gives them at least a wonderful option that what you're doing to let them buy nicer clothing. Things that, having a son born with neither arm, we've had to be adaptive and how he puts on his clothes and all the different things that he's had to do. So it's just wonderful what you do. But I have a question for you, Mindy, because I want to know that one question that we ask try to ask every show. What is that thing that you're pulling away? You're pulling along many, but what and who has pulled you along?
It's a great question. Of course, instinctually, I will say my son Oliver, as he truly opened my eyes, my family, to a whole new world. We were not exposed to anybody in our direct world with a disability, and suddenly everything changes when it becomes personal. And it is something that when he was young or newly diagnosed, when he was a couple years old, I remember people saying to me, "Oh, God gives you what you can handle. You are the perfect person to have a son with muscular dystrophy, and you'll be able to, you were chosen." And I remember being very angry, truthfully, when people internally, I would never be angry externally, but internally, because I wanted to be like, you know what? No, thank you. Thank you, but I don't want my son to go through this. I don't want my family to go through this. And now, almost 17 years later, I feel so lucky and so grateful that we have the gift of Oliver. Is it easy all the time? Of course it's not. Dave has been an incredible support for me, and just meeting Oliver and the ups and downs and the daily trials and tribulations of things you can't even expect or think about, and you're like, holy, how do I deal with this? He's struggling in his teenage years and just all of that stuff. But that is actually what pulls me along. It's being on this journey with him, being so fortunate and grateful to have met people like you, to meet the population that I deal with every single day, the people on my runways, the stories, the emails, the everything that I receive on a daily basis, more than pulls me along. It pulls me along so much that I can't wait to start every day to do more, bring more product, talk to more brands. So it started with one and has now grown to millions. But my moral compass, my driving force will most certainly always be Oliver Scheier.
Very nice, very nice. That's it's funny, you have your kids and we're supposed to pull them along, and then obviously at times in our life they're the reminders and the
Oh yes.
the encouragements, and even say the things that you don't expect. I had just my youngest son have a conversation with me, and he goes, "Dad, how are you doing?" Just checking in on me. It's kind of like he's
That's
my
so
old he's
sweet.
my old soul in
Yeah.
the group, and so it's interesting how your kids can be that, not always, but that certainly can be that for us. And we all have these different stories and different things to share regarding pulling each other along. Dave Clark. Oh, Bonnie Mann just joined us. Hey, Bonnie. She's saying, love what Mindy does.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Bonnie, of course, has
Hi,
been
Bonnie.
just a huge part of pulling each other along. Her story of winning 3 world champions as a boxer, and she's a pulling each other along chapter writer, but she's also really been pulling us along out there sharing. She just got in the news here locally with the pulling each other along story and being covered and all those kind of things. And so thank you, Bonnie. We're always glad that she's a part of this. Dave Clark. What else you got today? I know we
Doug
got to get into our
Cornfield.
football schools. I don't know, Mindy, are you a football fan?
Yes, I am.
Are you?
I
Now,
did
wait a
have
minute.
to
What?
grow up with 2 brothers, so it was either you were a football fan or you didn't get to participate.
There you go.
Yeah.
And what team are you a fan of, Mindy?
Eagles, proudly.
Yay! I got
Oh,
an Eagles
geez.
fan.
Yeah.
Then we have an Eagles story, an Eagles connection in the book.
Oh, I
Well,
didn't know
well,
that.
no, you kind of know that because
I
it's
do?
Marnie Schneider.
Oh,
I
yes,
mean,
yes, yes.
Not Marnie, yeah. So Marnie's grandfather, Leonard Tose, was the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles back
Hmm.
when we were kids, and when I was born in Philly, I think he would have been the owner back then, that far. But Leonard, even though he had a pretty struggled life in some ways, it was, rich man, businessman, successful, but had his struggles and things. But he was the founder and the funder of the first ever Ronald McDonald House.
I
And
love that.
so one of the chapters in the Pulling Each Other Along story, kind of Mindy, Marnie shares how her grandfather got that all started,
I
and
love
of
that.
course that's pulled me along in my family. I just mentioned that a little bit ago.
Yes, yes.
Dave,
Mine as well.
Dave Clark as well. Dave Stevens, is the Ron McDonald House ever helped or been a part of your journey?
Just to get an occasional Big Mac.
That's the Ron McDonald.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
that's helped pull you along.
Couple of times. But I wanted to ask Mindy too, because, as I've had to start mentoring and teaching at the college level for students, I've learned that I can't teach courage. They don't want sometimes to, know that if I'm on air, I have spina bifida or I have cerebral palsy. They're trying to hide that badge. And I want to know, how fulfilling is it for you? Because what you're doing instills confidence at an early age, where kids can feel normal and look normal and dress normal, where you can teach that confidence. I can't get them to wear that on their sleeve, but you're doing it at such an early age. I think it's almost like it's going to be something that is going to be instilled in them. And that's why this project's so important.
I love that point, and it is, I think, very, very difficult to teach. I would say what I love so much of what happens, even during our shows, of being in a room full of people with all different types of disabilities. Suddenly you're creating a community that you can almost like relax and breathe. And this is what, certainly Oliver shares with me, that it's the one place that he feels as typical and normal as he ever could, because he is with people that know exactly what he's going through. But I will share one amazing story from a show that we did in Vegas a couple years ago. And we had one model, a young woman who was 21, and she had a prosthetic arm, and she lived in Vegas. So we all know how hot it is there. And she never, ever wore anything that showed her arm. She wore long sleeves every single day of her life. And she was picked to be a model. And when she was shown the product that she was wearing, we always like to show every disability, certainly prosthetics, etc. So she was wearing something, a sleeveless garment, and it was really the first time that she ever publicly showed her arm, her prosthetic arm, and also clearly to the world. She went down the runway and was live streamed globally. And when she came off the runway, she was in buckets of tears about just how she never felt more comfortable in her life than going down that runway and being proud of her arm, and felt the support of everybody else that was on this journey with her. And she showed her prosthetic arm from that day on. And I think it's really, it can be very lonely to have a disability in the mainstream world. And I think that Runway of Dreams, and certainly the work that we're doing through Gamut Management, allows to feel less lonely, to be connected to people that really understand. I mean, this is, something that Oliver and I talk about all the time, that my heart is, broken a lot for him. But I will never understand what it's like to be in his body and feel, his lack of capacity and the degeneration of his muscles, on an annual basis. But I can provide him a community and a population that does understand and can relate. And that goes so far and has absolutely been a key factor to helping with confidence levels. Certainly from personal perspective with Oliver, but from what I have been lucky enough to witness on over the years of being involved.
And you talk about gamut management, so we got to let everybody know what that is, because in the real world, less than 3% of all people with disabilities get roles in TV, fashion, behind the scenes, things like that. Although you haven't come up with any roles for a 55-year-old legless fat guy.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Talk about what Gamut is doing to change those perceptions, because I know we see, and I'll say it, I'll talk about that elephant in the room. We see commercials nowadays where we're trying to get mixed race couples, and they're doing that a lot with black and white and Asian and thing, but we're still not seeing wheelchairs. We're still not seeing people missing arms and legs and things like that. So tell us about Gamut management and what you're doing and how you're doing to strive to change that.
Yeah. So actually the gamut management was really born out of necessity as Runway of Dreams really started to get more notoriety and more brands were reaching out to us, and even other industries like the entertainment industry, to be connected to people with disabilities. Suddenly the world was waking up that people with disabilities needed to be seen and are a part of our mainstream world. So when we started getting all of these incoming requests, it became very clear that I needed to start a company that was a talent management company exclusively for people with disabilities, so that we could not only help fill roles to really change the visual of who people with disabilities are, but this is something that I say often. I really do need to find out who quoted this, but if you don't see it, you cannot dream it. And we don't see people with disabilities in our mainstream world. We don't see them generally on TV and movies and commercials. And we're starting to. It's absolutely getting better. But Gamut Management is dedicated to not only representing people, and if anybody listening wants to join Gamut, it's completely free. The only thing that we require is that you have to have a disability to join and allow us to start putting you up for roles. And we also believe that everybody has a talent, whether that is working with brands and companies to help develop product, to test product, to wear test product, all the way up to being in the entertainment industry and the public eye. So we really utilize our talent in so many different ways on a weekly basis. We have talent doing focus groups for brands around the world. I actually am just freshly back from LA. We cast 2 of our talent in A Christmas Carol that is touring around the country. So I'm so excited that change is happening, and we are hopefully a part of making it happen.
Well, my 2 Daves, do you guys have talent? I'm not sure here. My 2 Daves on this show.
I don't have any talent.
Well, if only Mindy was around in your younger days when you had the Colgate smile, would that have worked?
Yes.
Jeez, look at that. That would have.
It still works.
It still works. He's got the jawline, the whole bit, and many people. What was one of your nicknames ever? Hollywood, Dave?
No.
No. All right.
No, more like Harlem.
There you go. And Dave's a great actor, right?
Oh, yeah. Hey, wait a minute. I was paid to act.
Yes, you were.
In the movie they shot in Williamsport. Only my part got it's on the floor somewhere.
Yeah.
They hired him to come. They shot a scene, and then that scene never. It got cut.
Yeah.
That was his big shot, and he didn't make it. Dave, I don't know if you've been in any. Dave Stevens, have you been in any movies yet or anything?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of appearances, but those were adult films, and I don't like to talk about.
No, not on this show, please. We do have another question that, like our fans, Mindy, they're going to get mad at us if we don't. We started this a long time ago, asking questions. but it goes back to Dave Clark. And in the children's book I wrote about Dave, A Pound of Kindness, I put in him keeping his donut away from. Whoops, I'm talking and I'm doing this stuff at the wrong time here. But he loves donuts. Dave loves donuts. I don't know about Dave Stevens. You love donuts, Dave Stevens? Okay. So Dave Clark loves donuts. So we ask our guest, what's your favorite donut is?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I'm a little, I guess, simple in my donut choice.
Okay.
I like just the plain cake one, whatever that one is called, not glazed, just your basic, delicious, whatever that's called donut.
I think it's called a cake donut sometimes.
I think it is a fried cake donut.
Yeah, that's all day long.
You know, being from the Philly area, I thought you might would have said pretzels.
A pretzel donut? What's a pretzel?
Well, I'm not, but they're on the street corners, and
oh yeah, of course. I mean, who doesn't love that? Yes.
Pretzels are everywhere in Philadelphia.
Yes.
So, is it still that way? It's been a long time since I've been to Philly.
Sure.
They still have pretzels everywhere.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful pretzels that make us look 3 times bigger than we want to be, but they are super good. So, I do have to say, you know what? And I don't think I have the score, but Dave, we do have to. We have Thursday. There it is. So our running score is: I was in last place 2 weeks ago, and I'm on a 4-0 run on predicting Thursday night football. And I am now ahead of the other 2 guests, Dave Geis and Dave Clark. And Dave Geis picked Pittsburgh tonight. So we have the game. We've been predicting the Thursday night games. Tonight it's the Steelers and the Vikings. And I know, Dave Stevens, you're a Vikings fan, correct?
That's why the Steelers will win.
Okay, because Vikings haven't been so good this year.
Detroit.
Detroit got the first win of the year against the Vikings, so yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess it was meant to be. And, we have a connection. I don't know, on the cover of the Pulling Each Other Along book, let me see if I can pull up the cover here. There's a young boy named Gavin that's pictured there with Dave and my son Gideon. And I get to tell people I'm an arm model now because my arm's in that picture. But Gavin's sister, who is a Pulling Each Other Along award winner, and she was at the high school with that shooting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're still a little bit shook up about the whole experience. She knew, I think, 2 of the victims, and don't quote me. I think Brandy said that 2 of the victims were actually friends of hers.
Oh boy.
And so they're torn up. So be thinking about them. And they're a chapter in our book. Gavin has mitochondrial disease. He's lived an extraordinary life to this point with huge amounts of struggles. And but he's got a huge spirit. Dave's connected with him in a big way, both in spirit. I think they're old souls. I think if there was life before this one, they were probably connected. It's that kind of connection. So, but be thinking about the Lowrys. They were part of that. So Michigan had to win. Detroit had to win last week. It just, something seemed meant to be, even in sport. But anyway, we want to pick our teams. Dave Geis, who could not be with us tonight, is usually with us, texted me, said Pittsburgh Steelers. So he's picked Pittsburgh Steelers. Dave Clark, being a Rocky Blyer fan, and Terry Bradshaw wrote our forward for the book. And, so do you go Pittsburgh?
Sorry, man. I am a Baltimore fan through and through. Always will be. And Pittsburgh is our bitter rival. And I still don't understand the going for 2 points last week when you got Justin Tucker, the best kicker.
But we lost Dave here for a second. Yeah.
Anyway, Vikings.
All right. So Vikings for Kurt, of course. Tom is Steelers. Dave Geis is Steelers. Dave Clark is Vikings. And
I haven't heard your pick yet.
I can't hate the Steelers as much as I used to. Being from Philly, we pretty much hated the Steelers. I mean, there was a couple teams we could not root for. Boston Celtics, I couldn't root for them for whatever reason. My dad hated the Boston Celtics. We hated the Yankees, so you never rooted for the Yankees. And pretty much we hated the Pittsburgh Steelers. And but now that, I got some friends that are Steelers connections, and they're going to win probably tonight, I have to say the Pittsburgh Steelers. But yeah, I got to pick the Steelers. Todd, of course, Todd's going to win for sure because he picked the Patriots. Mindy, who would you pick tonight? Between the Vikings and the Steelers, you get to pick two.
Vikings.
Going with Dave
Thank
Clark.
you. Thank you.
Dave Stevens, did you pick the Steelers or did you pick in the Vikings?
I'm picking the Steelers, so I hope the Vikings win. I'm trying to do
I
that.
gotcha.
I can't do that.
Like it's going to help?
It
might.
But before we let Mindy go, I want to ask her what's new and what's on the horizon going on for Runway of Dreams.
We have a lot going on. May I first answer Tom's question here about the footwear to go over foot and ankle orthotics?
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Tom, I just want to direct you to Billy Footwear. Billy does an extraordinary job of amazing shoes he himself had a spinal cord injury and really understands the needs of footwear, and the product is great, super fashionable, a lot of great styles. And also I would definitely direct you to Zappos Adaptive, because they actually have a category for orthotics and AFOs. So I just wanted to make sure that I got back to Tom on that. What's happening? So we are going to LA, which is so exciting. We're having our first Runway Dream show ever on the West Coast, March 8th in Los Angeles. Of course, that will be followed by our kind of crown jewel during New York Fashion Week in September. So much going on with Gamut. I'm excited to say we're casting a lot of television and commercials and movies, and most importantly, working with a lot of brands on developing mainstream adaptive products. So I think we're going to see a lot in 2022 as it relates to seeing people with disabilities in adaptive products.
I like it. I like it a lot. Now we just got to get a movie about Dave Clark and get that movie going so that we can use some folks with limitations. I see a little boy playing him, and I would love to get a little boy with limitations playing him. Although it's pretty hard to teach a kid how to play baseball on crutches. So especially the old-timey crutches. So we'll have to see how that works. But I'm sure there's somebody out there that's athletic, that's young.
I'm sure we can find him.
He has to be cute, right? Because we saw how cute Dave was back when he was young. So the kid has to be cute too. I don't know. This is a tall order, right, Dave?
Right, Doug.
Yeah, right. So hey, I don't know if you know this, Mindy, but we had our Kickstarter going for the Pulling Each Other Along book, and we did reach our minimum goal, and we got about 4,000 more than our original goal, and we have pushed forward to a new platform, so people can now go to the pullingeachotheralong.com, and I have a special that we just started. I'm not even sure Dave Clark knows this, but we want to give people a kind of a sneak peek of the first chapter. And for $1, they can contribute more, I think. Amazing. But for $1, they can go to Indiegogo. It's a crowdfunding. We got picked to be a part of their in-demand program. And so people can go and they can pre-order the book and all those kind of things. But for $1, we're letting them download, and we'll send them a PDF version of the first chapter of this book, which is called, again, Why We Pull. And this chapter is the inspirational story of Dave Clark, which is the inspiration for the whole Pulling Each Other Along. So I wanted folks to know that. Please share that. When you see links coming out, we have a new goal, which is somewhere where we want to have enough funding to basically be able to purchase 10,000 books prior to the publish date. And so that's going to be in a couple of months. So we have a lot of work ahead of ourselves. We're probably close to halfway through to that goal already. And books are on the way, but printing and supply chains and all that stuff are kind of unpredictable at this point. But books are on the way. We have a prototype. It looks beautiful. Mindy, your chapter is beautiful. Dave Stevens' chapter is beautiful. Dave Clark, your chapter it's
Ugly.
beautiful. It's beautiful. I had somebody get it the other day, and it obviously it's so well written. It's really nice. It's a beautiful story. If you don't get goosebumps reading that chapter, check your pulse, because it's just, you don't have a pulse, and so folks can get that, and they'll get a feel for your chapter, Dave Stevens' chapter, the other chapters that are part of this book, and it's also a way to help drive traffic to that platform. The more traffic that we get, the better our algorithms and all the stuff that SEO and all the stuff that we don't understand works for us. So please go out that. But there's one thing I didn't show a couple of the pictures of that I pulled up from you today already. So this is one of your seemingly, I'm not sure what's going on right here in this picture. Can you tell us, Mindy?
That was our second runway shows. That was back in 2017.
Okay.
That was in New York City. That's Oliver. And now he's almost unrecognizable because he's
Wow,
but that was really
he's so tall.
Yeah. And then we had, this looks like, you're actually on the runway, which is really cool. Yeah. And so when we're talking about Runway of Dreams, I wanted to show a runway shot. But one of the things that I loved when I saw, your stuff is that you are on a fashion revolution.
Yes.
And I love that you're inclusive. We talked about something that happened a few weeks ago. Todd Sivan was reading my children's book, and to a young class, and the little boy goes, "Well, Dave wasn't an outcast; he was an incast." And you're letting people be incasts. I don't even know if that's a word. I don't know if we've officially.
I love it.
And so the little boy got it, because Dave was included. Dave Stevens has been included. You're including people. And we love that as we're all pulling each other along. And that's what this show is about, highlighting people like you, pulling each other along.
I have a quick question for Mindy before we go. I was reading, I believe it was a Sports Illustrated, maybe a couple of years ago, and it highlighted your story with a young lady who was, I believe, in the Runway of Dreams. Do you recall that story? I cannot recall the young lady's name that was in that story, and that's how I became aware of what you're doing, is through that story. I think it was Sports Illustrated that was in. It was that sports magazine.
So was she an athlete?
No, she was not. She was mentally limited. She had mental limitations. And but she was decked out, dolled out, and really, it was great to see.
Oh, I love that. I'll have to think about what article that was.
Okay, yeah, dude, I'm sure.
She said so many. It's kind of like you, Dave Clark and Dave Stevens. You guys have so many, you don't even know where they all are.
Mindy, what about the Adidas news?
What's Adidas got?
Did you have some Adidas news?
Adidas, not yet.
Wow.
I saw it. Never mind.
Oh no, that I spoke with for yes. Oh, I thought we were talking product, which is
no.
That's coming down. Yes, I was so fortunate to speak in their global summit for the Adidas ERG, the Employee Research Group for, they call it the World of Disability. And I actually spoke with Chris, oh my goodness, Nikic, who is the first athlete with Down syndrome to complete an Ironman. And he is extraordinary and so full of life and so wonderful. and it was an honor to speak along with him. But it just really shows the commitment of these global brands that are getting into the space, doing it the right way, learning, talking about it, and then ultimately following up with product and involvement. But it is really such incredible evidence of the commitment of what is happening with global brands.
Right. And of course, Chris Nickick has got a chapter in our book, which is wonderful. So
I love
that's
that.
all.
He's amazing. And his dad's amazing. I love the whole family.
Yeah. So Chris Nickick is in the book. And so we have his story. And we actually wrote his story before he finished the Iron Man.
Oh, how exciting.
And then we had to kind of, okay, we got to change this a little bit,
Yeah.
before it was published. And of course he was post Iron Man finisher then. And so we've been following his story. Actually, Todd Sivan wrote the children's book for Chris Nickick, and called, I think it's 1% Better. So that's the whole, the whole mantra of just getting 1% better, and what amazing thing for his story as well. So it is interesting, all these connections. Todd had alluded to that earlier, that we're all kind of, even though we've technically have never physically met, we've met on Zoom and all those things, but someday you got to get Dave Clark too down that runway. I mean,
that's easy.
I mean, here you go. Let's see, can you bring this smile back? That's what I want to know.
Oh, geez.
He loves that picture. Every time I show it, he absolutely loves it when I do that. So that's why I have to do it all the more. But thank you, Mindy, for being here. Is there any more questions you guys have?
Still want to get Dave on that bearskin rug.
You need a bearskin rug? I have plenty up here. My father-in-law's got plenty of those kind of things. So we got that.
Hey, before we cut out, I want to mention that I want to say hi to Rusty Dye and Barbara Zetti and Kurt and Tom and Laura, all our regular listeners, and they certainly came through in Corning. Barbara Zetti and her son Peter helped us out, and really appreciate everybody listening in and continuing with our drivel every Thursday evening.
Barbara wants the Steelers, Dave. Is you disown her?
Yeah, that doesn't go well. I'll have to talk to her about that.
Don't forget, for all the viewers, make sure you follow Runway of Dreams on all social media, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. They have a lot of things that they do that they're posting daily with things, innovations, all these kind of things. So runwayofdreams.org. You can contribute, you can go there, you can support, you can find out where you can get these clothing, and you can continue to find out updates as Mindy continues to change the world.
Thank you. And also, if anybody is interested in Gamut Management, also we're on all the social platforms. Gamut Management, you can go to gamutmanagement.com to find out more about what we do. But thank you so much, Dave, for mentioning that.
Yep, yeah, very good. Thank you, Dave.
I need to add an Oscar to my Emmy, so come on, let's.
Yeah, you got it. Deal.
Yes, so we definitely need you to have more hardware.
My head won't be big enough.
Yeah, we definitely want that. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Dave Stevens, thanks for.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mindy.
Special guest, and thank you, Mindy. Just let us know if there's things that we can do. Stay in touch. Help us get the word out for this new campaign with the Pulling Each Other Along book. Every time your story's shared, all those other stories that were mentioned, the Ronald McDonald House, Dave Clark, Dave Stevens, Chris Nickick. I don't even know what else we mentioned today, but there's 31 of them.
And, man,
help us get the word out, and we look forward to connecting with you again.
Absolutely.
And hopefully connecting soon. So this has been, I guess we'll all say goodbye. This has been a Pulling Each Other Along show. We'll all say goodbye, wave our hands. Dave, you can do the spin around.
Yeah.
And there you go. He's a weeble that wobbles, and sometimes he falls down. So don't hurt that arm.
Hey, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to have another show between now and the new year. We might have some pop-up shows. We'll have to see, because I got to keep winning the Thursday night football game. I don't want Dave and Dave to beat me. So You know, we're not competitive at all around here, though. So, anyway, thanks, Mindy. It's been great
Thank
chatting
you
with
so
you. Hope
much.
everybody enjoyed the show, and we'll see you the next show. This has been the 42nd episode of Pulling Each Other Along. I'm Doug Cornfield. I was with Dave Stevens and Mindy Scheier. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all the next show, probably in the new year.